Hi, this is Annie Grace, and welcome to this Naked Mind podcast. And I'm here with Barbara. Hi, Barbara.
Hi, Annie Grace. Thank you for having me.
We were just chatting about the fact that you are in a hotel room with your fourth birth this week, did you say?
This week, well, over the last six days now, yes.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. So you're a doula?
Yes, I'm actually a midwife, but because I did my training in Switzerland, I can't work here as a midwife, so yes.
Okay, so you're doing the doula work. I've had doulas and midwives with all of my children, and they've all been, really, really great experiences. Like I just really, I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with like Ina May Gaskin, and
yes, absolutely.
When I was in my late 20s and just decided, you know what, and I was born at home and my brothers were born at home with midwives. And so I was like, you know what, I want to just go that route and not have any, I mean, obviously if something were to happen, I wasn't opposed or anything. I want to be open-minded, but I wanted to have, no interventions, no medication. And so did 3 births, I'm done.
And you had that perfect, that family story. It was like almost like a mindset, knowing that your mom, had you at home, that it really helps. Yeah.
And it was a really helpful thought, like through the, most intense parts of it, just like two helpful thoughts actually. And we'll get into your story, but I just think this is interesting because it always comes down to our thoughts and our perspective, right? What makes things easier.
Exactly.
And the two most helpful thoughts for me during the most intensive, all of it, my first baby was like 22 hours of labor, 3 hours of pushing. And then my second and third babies were very, very quick, almost born in the car quick.
Yep.
And, but they were more painful. They were more intense in the rapid nature.
Mm-hmm.
And the thoughts that kept me going were, number one, that, for millennia, we have not had hospitals and intervention and stuff like that. So like, this is not new for women, and women are super strong and amazing and powerful. And then the other thought, and this was from my mom, she gave me this belief, is like, there's nothing wrong. Like I'm not being hurt. Like my brain is telling me I'm being hurt, but I'm not being hurt. There's no danger here. And I understand in some cases there actually is danger, but in labor pains, there isn't danger to the body. It feels like danger, but it's not. And so that really was grounding for me. Like, okay, this is just a feeling. I'm not being hurt. Like, I mean, I am being hurt as in pain, but my body, although it feels like it's being ripped apart, it's not.
Right. And it's a bit like, I don't need to do anything about this relief. I don't have to take action because we always feel like this is wrong. I need to do something about it. And just like, it's like, you can let it be. It's one breath at a time and just come back to that mantra. Yeah.
You don't need to take action. You can endure it. It will not kill you. It won't even going to hurt you. You're going to feel fine 5 minutes after. And by the way, it's happening anyway. So there's
exactly.
Even if you were going to try to stop it, you can't.
Right.
So you just have to get in the
I work at hospitals mostly because that's kind of my background as a midwife. I used to be a hospital-based midwife just because that's what 99% of all midwives do in Switzerland. We work with the doctors. So I have a really strong background in medical use and making decisions and just using with modern technology and bathtubs and water births and on and on.
Really cool.
But my goal also beyond helping women have as natural birth as possible, then there are those who can't. And that's kind of become my specialty mission. How can you walk away from a birth that is not easy and didn't just happen kumbaya, with the Christmas lights and, that story. And how can you still move on and say, I own this birth? It was my birth. It was good and I'm ready for parenthood. So
beautiful. And the thing that I, really did lose sight of through the whole thing is that the birth is so irrelevant to the life. I mean, it's not irrelevant, I don't know that, but it's so, like, we make such a big deal out of doing it right, having the right things. And all of my babies were born in hospital. And so I really appreciated that blend of kind of Western and, primal But it was amazing. And it's interesting that what we were just talking about in terms of the allowing it, enduring the feelings,
Yeah.
realizing it will kill you. I couldn't help thinking in my head, how similar is that to a craving, to riding kind of that
Oh,
urge.
you have no idea how much I've thought about, especially since I quit drinking. It's been an explosion. I mean, just I thought about this because that's exactly what the hypnobirthing basically does. And that's what all those old men who came up with their methods, the Bradley method and the breathing, that's basically what they did. Disassociate, take your brain, take it somewhere else, shut down your entire left hemisphere and just be birth, allow it, but since I quit drinking, I've thought so much about the whole fear, tension, the amygdala, the stories that come in, the anticipation. And I've read several books now, and I have started calling myself, I stole this, I didn't come up with it, but the Amygdala Whisperer, which I just love that word. And really that's what it comes down to allow birth, to allow, I keep saying you may be a marathon runner, which by the way doesn't really help in laboring because it just means you have a really, really tight pelvic floor and a really, really strong mind. That means your left hemisphere is probably super dominant. But giving birth is really allowing your body to do its thing, and I'm there kind of like the lighthouse, as long as my light flashes green, you're safe. And taking those anxiety hormones down a notch. Just as you say, there's nothing that needs to be done here. This is normal. So,
yeah, it's really amazing, the similarity. So let's talk about alcohol. Why don't you tell us your story? Why don't you back us all the way up to the beginning?
I know I'm so excited to talk about this because I don't have that many people I talk about. I mean, I have to package it so they don't think, what, you were an alcoholic? Or because I just think, no, let me explain this. But I grew up in Switzerland. So alcohol in the culture I grew up in wasn't it wasn't even on my mind. There's no college, at least not in my environment. There was no college drinking culture. Switzerland drinks beer or wine, and I'm sure it has more morphed into cocktails, but it's not like the fraternity, sorority drinking, getting drunk, blacking out. And I just wasn't interested. I mean, seriously, it wasn't even that I wasn't interested. I didn't even think about it. I was an au pair when I was 17 in Florence to learn Italian, and they made their own wine, and they just poured me wine sometimes for lunch. It was probably the best wine you could ever have drank, but I thought, why am I so tired? It was just, they didn't ask, there was no talking about it. So that was probably my first wine exposure, but there wasn't this, yeah, I can't even describe it. It was just something I wasn't going to do. I got into climbing. I was I called it my heroin. I was so high on life. I was high on climbing, on the excitement, on the mountains, on being outdoors. I felt like it was like being put in a bright spotlight and coming to life. And there was some drinking at the huts because people drink wine. It's just what you do. Or you get to the summit and somebody has some hot cider tea with spiked, and you'd have a swig. And mostly my reaction was, oh, no, I'm tired, and I would always say I was one of those minds. I somewhere a long time ago read this great analogy of a refrigerator. You close the door and the light doesn't go off. That was me, and which was great because it made me very curious and, just changeable and interested and learning friendly. But for working as a midwife, I had a hard time with night shifts and shift changes. I just couldn't turn my mind off. And that's sort of when I first discovered, wow, if I drink a glass of wine, I fall asleep. Wow, isn't that great? But I didn't put two and two together that it could also, back then it didn't really give me a headache. I wasn't as tuned in, but wine wasn't part of I grew up with parents, they really thought wine was, alcoholism was like the bottom of the worst. So I also had that internalized. And then I wanted to learn English. I came to the States in 86 and I was 23, took an English class, took the TOEFL test of English as a foreign language course. I had met somebody in Guatemala the summer before, and all these little sub stories. I was in love a lot. So that's kind of like the high you get from substance, right? And I stayed with him at Stanford. He was a resident, and that wasn't going to work. But I went climbing, and I met a friend from Switzerland, and we went rock climbing in Joshua Tree. And there was beer, and it was just part of it. Everybody drank a little beer, but I never pursued or never looked at it as like, I'm going to get drunk. It was like, at the end of the day, you have a beer. And then I met my husband, and he was a really big time, old time, big name climber. I didn't know that. He was, oh my God, he was my big love. He was amazing. He was the most beautiful climber you could have imagined, deep, everything. I don't even know how we communicated. My English was pretty much 4 months old, but it worked. And he drank at times really heavily. Heavily, rum and coke. This is he grew up in the 50s, 60s, big soloing, hard climb, you name it, background of bad parenting, the typical 50s parenting, with some really physically abusive, alcohol involved parenting. And so but I didn't put this all together. I didn't think, oh, red light, somebody is coping with his emotions here in a pretty volatile way. Never physically abusive, but just emotionally intense and clearly intensified with alcohol. And it upset me. But instead of saying, you know what, you better clean that up. He was 11 years older. And by the way, we're still married. Instead of telling him, hey, buddy, what did I know? I was 23 and so over the moon. I thought I was going to die. I just started experimenting a bit more, a little more. And I never drank hard liquor but so much because I felt like it takes too long to get the high, and then it doesn't get out of your system. And I react to valerian, I'm practically, I can't take melatonin without having nightmares. I have to go back to the list of side effects. It's like, yep, got that. And somehow I made it okay to feel not okay with wine because it slowly became a useful enough tool to dim the switch, my high energy. But it still was off and on. We got married in 88 because I couldn't go back and forth. They wouldn't have let me back in the country. Kept working as a midwife, kept going back and forth. So for about 13 years, we did I will go back to Switzerland. I will come back here. Worked for 3 months a year as a midwife to make a little money. I started working as a mountain guide. It was a pretty awesome life. Looking back, it was like, that was me, now that I have a 20-year-old daughter. But we climbed a lot. That was the thing. And it became pretty habitual that we would have a couple beers at night. Guiding, when you come back, we guided some in South America, and there's a lot of celebrating going on, and the guides drink a lot. And, in Argentina, the wine is amazing. That's when I first remember thinking, oh my God, that, the air temperature, after all that tension, the physical, like you're out for 18, 20 days, you summited a really high mountain like Aconcagua or so. And it, it was just this roller coaster. And I never thought about what happens in my brain, what happens with my body. It was more, I have to hold it together so much, and then it's wonderful. And a little bit, it was like late rebelling against my parents because they're so outdated, what do they know? They got married so young. And then I got pregnant on one of those guiding trips with my husband. I climbed some big mountains when I was pregnant. Now I think, what was I thinking? I mean, just, I was in shape. I was acclimatized, and then of course had to stop guiding. Also, as soon as I knew I was pregnant, I quit drinking. I mean, I hear that a lot. It wasn't an issue. It was like, doesn't even taste good. Actually tasted horrible, which was great. Coffee, wine, the best wine in Argentina tasted like out of a tin can. So it was great. I felt good, adjusted to the idea of having a kid. It wasn't quite planned. My life wasn't, I didn't write a script from a life. Let's put it that way. It just kind of happened. And I had my daughter, and I thought, I got this whole having a kid thing. I mean, I was a midwife. I'm going to be so knowledgeable. I've worked in postpartum, and it was hard. It was really hard. And maybe it's big. I mean, later my daughter said, Mom, look at Dad. What did you expect? I'm intense. You guys are intense. And she's probably right. So she was, they call it colicky. I call it intense. And I started relaxing with beer and wine, as so many other stories. And it just became a daily thing. It became a daily 4 or 5 o'clock beer, 7% IPA, then half a bottle of wine, then maybe 2/3 of a bottle at the end. I'm not a big person, and then menopause hit, and you just don't metabolize it. And sleeping, waking up as you have described it, the 2 a.m. other voice, why are you doing this? This is so not you. This is the last time. And at 4 o'clock, where's my beer? I mean, it wasn't even questionable. And then I tried quitting, and 3 years ago, that was 2.5 months, and then back, and it's like, why did I ever want to quit? How can anything that makes you so happy for a short time be wrong? But then there was this one time I watched a TED Talk it was clearly 7 p.m. Maybe it was even 8 p.m. And my first thought was, I would never do that, because I would be drinking my wine, and that was just some unconscious, like, how can they do that at 8? I mean, who does anything at 8? And I thought, what has happened? And that's the other good thing about menopause, is you actually become aware of your mortality. I mean, I knew we were all going to die, that the universe was not going to make an exception, but you don't really know it. You think, oh no, for me, they will forget it. And when you start changing hormones, all of a sudden it's like, my dad died suddenly, and I'm going to die. I'm going to be 60 in 2 years. It's like, what? And that really helps looking at, maybe I have 20, 30, if I'm lucky, years. And what am I going to do with my life? 4 o'clock beer, 5 o'clock wine, nice dinner, not remember. I mean, I wasn't full. I was the gray area drinker. Nobody ever thought, Barbara, oh no, she's got it all. I was just I called him my bubble wrap. It was nobody can ask me anything after 5 p.m. in my family. Like, this is my me time, which meant not care, not worry. And I don't know, the idea now looking at it, well, why does one want to be oblivious? You know, why does one want to not be present? But that's pretty much what it was. And then I looked at my life and thinking, I don't have that much time. I mean, I'm maybe 2/3 through it. And if I do the math, if I start at 4:30, that's like 5 hours of my waking time that I'm not even there.
Wow. That's
You know, yeah. And then you think we all want to get old. I mean, I could also just do more living time now, you know, and not waste it, because there's not much you do. And even if I don't, it's not like I write a book at 7 p.m. now. I'm not, you know, not being, oh my God, now between 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. I'm becoming the new, I don't know, Pulitzer Prize winning novel author. But I'm at least me. I show up. Actually, that's something I say a lot now, is like, I go to bed with myself and I wake up with myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually, so anyhow, then it was, I'm trying to remember. It was January 4th. We had a family dinner and they drink pretty heavily. I mean, I call it heavily compared to my family. It's just clear. You walk in, what do you want to drink? And it was a make-up Christmas dinner because I was at a birth on Christmas. And I had, you know, I got my wine and my beer first, and my niece, who's 36, was drinking grape juice. And I said, why are you drinking grape juice? And she said, oh, we're taking a break from drinking. And they're pretty heavy drinkers. Yeah, they said that the holidays, it was just too much. We have 2 little kids. And I thought, that is so cool. I want to be that. That's what I want to do. And then 2 weeks later, there was an article in and who would think that it really affects people, but there was an article in the Sunday Seattle Times, and it was a big article on sober bars and sober curious and how there's a movement. And I read it and I thought, oh, I want to be at that bar. I want to be that person. I was that person. You know, I remember me feeling good, feeling me versus checked out a bit. Just that one step removed to where I feel like my mind is actually not quite there. My brain is there. It's like separating the two. So the next day, then I thought, I'm going to quit. Okay, I'm going to quit. I've thought that many times. And I went that night. There's a church down the street that had a sign, meditation. So that night I went there. It wasn't what I thought it was. I thought, okay, I'm not going here again. The next day, my husband, he must be tuned in, and said, let's go to a bookstore. Just because. And we did, and there was your book. You know, I was like, you know, walking around with that rod to find water. What is it? That's how I feel. I was walking around the bookstore. I wasn't even thinking alcohol, because I've looked at those books and they didn't quite do it. I've already read Kick Alcohol for Good, and it just didn't quite take. And then there you were. And I sat down in the bookstore and I just knew this is it. And I came home, and that's, by the way, all I didn't even do the 30-day alcohol challenge. I just, as you said, I read your book 1 or 2 chapters a day. I started listening to your podcasts sometime into it. I wasn't even aware there was a podcast at first. I was so focused on that. Oh, right. And then day 4, I had a birth or several meetings. I came home, started cooking, and cooking is a big, you know, one of my lines was, how does anybody cook without wine? You know? Like it's something to be proud of. And I said, okay, that was a nice try. That's not gonna, you know, they gave it 4 days. You know, I want my beer. I opened my beer and had a few sips, and I thought, that doesn't taste right, but whatever. And then I opened my wine so I could breathe. And there's something, about the color of the wine that you really have, like, I think now I know that's my dopamine going, when I see the right deep color of wine. And I drank that beer and I just kept thinking, ugh. Then I didn't pour my wine and I sat down and I finished the beer, but I really didn't like the way it made me feel. And I thought, can this be? Is this even possible? It's like woo-woo, right? It's like, and this is sort of what is it? Day 4 must be 6 chapters into your book. I wasn't done with it. And that was it. That was my last drink. January 19th. Yeah. And it's been life-changing. And no, I have not started a blog or a podcast or written a book, but I feel like I have to take it somewhere. I am so passionate about this brain thing, as you are. I thought, now I get Annie Grace. She just got high on this realization that we are not just our brains, and that's where the big problem lies, that we can't. I'm starting to see there's a mind. There's something that comes out of a perfect imperfect. Nobody's perfect. A homeostasis that is very subtle. And when we are healthy, there's something that can come to life. Like I call it a being, or it's like the breath of the universe hits us in this homeostasis, and out comes Barbara, Annie Grace, and it's magic. It's where meaning comes into life, because we're just optimizing our unique energy with, you want to call it consciousness or being. But when I drink, I obliterate that, and then my body's spending all this energy trying to recalibrate. And I'm not, after all of 25 years of continuous drinking, even though I wasn't blackout drunk, I was functioning fine. I just felt off and tired and exhausted, and I knew that was not me. So, I have so much that I can tell you that has happened. I don't know. I don't know how much time I even have to.
But yeah, we can keep going. I wanted to say something about that, what you were saying. So many people, it's one of, I think, the most overlooked aspects to this shift is the awakening of your intuition. And I get letters all the time about that. And it feels, I haven't talked about it a ton because I always like to really be able to say, okay, and then here's the study, here's the brain science, here's the thing. But I think what you just said actually articulated it really well, is when your brain isn't spending so much of its energy, and your mind and your body isn't spending so much of its energy trying to just fight off the toxin, or just maintain homeostasis, or just get back to normal and prep for what's next, you do allow, like, there's something to it where getting back in touch with like the inner voice. And I also think if you consider the inner dialogue when you are both drinking more than you want, and if you're taking a break less than you want at the same time, because by the way, the dialogue happens either way. So if you're taking a break, but you're really feeling like you're missing out, and it wasn't by choice, and you're doing it because you feel like you've been, you have to do it because the consequences are too great, you have a huge inner dialogue every time alcohol presents itself, which is constantly. Equally, if you are drinking and you're really feeling as if you wish you were drinking less, you have a huge inner dialogue. And so I think just that noise, it's like your intuition, that little still small voice, is trying to talk over all of that dialogue that's just happening about.
It's what really has helped me. So the steps, for one, the underlying beliefs, that's a great first. The great first step is to quit drinking, and then to maintain it is the underlying beliefs, and that's revolutionary. And then understanding that your body is is doing its thing. It doesn't necessarily do you much good when it comes to drugs, because it is wired to want that, because it isn't actually, it wasn't designed for drugs. So I thought, wow, if I forage out in the woods and I find couple cups, handfuls of blueberries, if this is a few hundred years ago when there was a food shortage or what, my dopamine goes up. I'm going to remember anything. I'm euphoric. I want to go back to that, right? And that's a good thing. So my brain just did a very good thing. It remembered where I found energy and, substance. So now if I drink 2 glasses of wine, I just ingested a bucket full of or more of blueberries, and that's not healthy anymore. And it's alcohol, it has alcohol in it. And so, but my brain can't sort the two out. So it just does its thing. And for me, that was such a revelation. My body just does what it's supposed to do. That doesn't make it right.
Right.
That doesn't mean, so to learn to, oh, yeah, you felt euphoric. It's because all this was going on in your brain, and now I think, oh, the GABA, it is increased, but then it drops, and the glutamate is still high. That's why my heart is racing at 2 a.m. And it helps me not identify with it. It helped me go, it's just the body trying to cope with this onslaught of something that it's not supposed to have to deal with.
Right.
And just that helped me separate the two. And then, oh, I don't have to follow this impulse when it tells me, oh, remember how good that felt? Well, yeah, but it also didn't make me feel good. Before, I believed that voice because I identified with it. I was entwined. It didn't even occur to me that could be just my craving. Somehow, even though I knew it was a craving, but I could not separate. Yeah. And that was a total freedom piece.
Yeah, so good. And I think that, there's 2 voices that we have. If we were to say, okay, well, what parts of the brain are they coming from? I think that the part that really wants the best for you and for your body is really coming from your neocortex, your prefrontal lobe. And then the part that wants the worst from you is coming it doesn't want the worst for you. It just wants survival. And it's coming from, the lizard brain, the amygdala, from this very survival-based mechanism. But that part of the brain was never designed to interact with any of the agents that we have to kind of tickle it, right? And I mean, there's lots of studies on things like Facebook and Instagram, and obviously like high fructose corn syrup and certain gambling and pornography and all of these things that like our brains we didn't expect, we didn't evolve for our ability to create stuff that's going to tickle that want to, but completely leave us at a disadvantage because the want to becomes far stronger than the liking. And so you find yourself doing something that you feel desperate to do and you don't understand, but you don't even like anymore.
Well, yeah, or such a short time, or it's so not worth it.
Right.
But you're being overridden by the mechanics,
yeah, survival mechanics. And then we get it wrong, by the way. Then we say, oh, but no, normal people are fine. And then, but it's just certain people that have that. No, that doesn't even make sense. It is not true. I mean, if they gave, there's so many studies on this, but they gave, they expose rats to food that does the same thing in the, like different types of food, highly saturated, and 100% of them eat until complete destruction, right? Like it's same with any addictive substance. It's the same mechanism. It's not that there's just some people who are more morally sound or more able to. And I think when we see that, and when we release the shame and the guilt, then we can awaken some compassion for, oh, okay, brain, you're just trying to keep me alive. You
Mm-hmm.
expect this. And thank goodness that if we're going to create all these things, which we did, by the way, create, even fermented vegetables back in the day, or if blueberries went, I'm sure that's how like alcohol was discovered, that something started to rot. It made us feel funny. The percentage of alcohol was so weak compared to what we're dealing with today. And that's true across the board for everything. We just find ways to enhance and enhance and enhance. But, I mean, I guess the good news about that is that like it really does, we are kind of to a point where you saturate yourself with something and we do start to wake up. It's almost like we have to go through the intensity. And I think it's happening younger and younger now, which is really cool too, in the sense that, for you and I, like for me, it was more than a decade. You're saying more than 25 years. And because it was a slow burn, but now I think people are like just, especially I think what's happened with, when we were in quarantine and stuff, people were like, okay, well, just guardrails off. I'm just going to drink all day long. And very quickly, within 8 weeks, they're like, oh, this isn't doing what I thought it was going to do. This isn't feeling like I thought it was going to feel. And so they're really wanting to make a change. So there is something to be said for just like the short, steep way up the mountain instead of the long circuitous.
The long circuit, yeah. It's just remembering who you were. I mean, who that other you is. I think that's a key component. I read a book. You may have heard of him, Louis Cozolino. He wrote Why Therapy Works, but the subtitle is How to Change Our Brains with Our Minds. And he really separates, and that's where I had these aha. And he has another book, The Neuroscience of Psychotherapy. And he really goes into the neuroscience and social brain. And I think it was another one of those wow books.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, I think I thought you might really like it, and heavy on the neuroscience. But the other thing I was going to mention, I also have a now 20-year-old daughter. So simultaneously that I went through this quitting my wine habit, I call it retiring from my wine habit. I like that a lot. And I just say, I'm done. I had 2 bottles, by the way, in my cupboard that I was given by, of course, right when I quit, 2 clients gave me wine. And I put them symbolically in the cupboard underneath the sink after 5 months. I told my husband, drink them. I'm done. I know I will not, before I was like, yeah, but what? They may be really good bottles, done. But my daughter was going through a pretty challenging time, post-competitive climbing, readjusting. The competitive mind is also very far from the true self. And just trying to find out who she was, which came with a lot of challenges, and being in a competitive national level sport, you deal with body image and the idea of having to look like a 13-year-old forever, and hating yourself if you don't, and depriving yourself. So that was a motivator why I read so much of the psychotherapy brain thing, because she got into a controlling food and breakthrough controlling, and she was at a loss, like, why is this happening? She's the most self-disciplined person who just could not have stop that, and that correlated with the drinking so much, and with the quitting, and it just spurred me on to read and listen. And there's a podcast called Brain Over Binge that is really good. They have really good pieces of, maybe were you on that? Maybe not.
I don't think so.
But it's just total crossover. And their approach really is, you're not your brain. You are a mind that can actually slowly separate from a brain, and they use this image of the sky being you, the mind, but moods and cravings are like weather that moves through the sky. You don't have to identify with each storm that goes through. And that, I think, was a really good nugget in there for my daughter, but it helped me. And by the way, I still listen to your podcasts constantly. I think I've pretty much listened to, going backwards, almost everything for the psychology of it and the way you do it. You have so little ego in it. That's, I mean, you just, there's so many podcasts out there. There's so much just filling the space with words that I have very little tolerance for. So you don't bring yourself in this, you know, you don't claim, except when you have something important to say. So
oh, I love that. Thank you for that feedback. It's always so good because I look at the download numbers and we just hit 7 million and I'm like,
oh my gosh,
who are these people that are listening and what do they think? I don't know. There isn't necessarily like a huge feedback loop. So I sometimes just feel like I'm just talking to, you know, when I'm doing those solo ones, just talking to my little green light on my computer. And then of course I enjoy this much more doing the stories because it's fascinating and so fun.
It's the stories are really helpful because when you listen to a story from not your side, but from the other side, it does trigger your own thinking. And I think, oh, that's exactly how I felt, or that was different from me, for me. You know, I didn't go that route. I was more that other. By the way, I think I'm the perfect proof that even that anybody can get addicted because I've no family. I mean, just so not that person. I love my level head. I love being clear. I love that spiritual connection to everything. And I got totally, I hate using those words, but I just got habituated.
Yeah.
Totally. Absolutely. So, but it helps me then in my own mind goes like, yeah, just like that. And then how would I frame it? And it sparks more thought. That's why people probably keep listening, even if they're long done drinking. Because it's inspiring.
Well, it's a gift you being here to share your story as well, because it does take guts and I just really appreciate it. I have 2 more questions for you, Barbara.
Okay.
First of all, how does your husband feel about all of this?
Well, he, of course, at first thought, yeah, it's one of her, he was always supportive. He always said, you know, I don't want to, do you want me to leave the room when he has his beer? And we both drank similar. He always had maybe one more beer and then same amount of wine, but he could at parties definitely go way higher than I could. But he probably thought at the beginning, yeah, we've tried this before, right? He was supportive, and then I just kept doing it. And what he is saying now is just, I am so impressed. And I keep saying, you don't need to be impressed. I'm just thankful. I'm just grateful. I'm not even proud. I mean, this is not about being proud. This is more like, oh my God, somebody opened the door for me. That's what it's more like. And then it's like, oh, this is crystal clear. And he has now gone down to 2 beers a night, and that's pretty much it. Even though he has no intention to quit completely, but I think it's been good for both of us.
Neither did my husband. So, and he did eventually, very naturally. He just kind of stopped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, he told me, he was like, I'm never going to stop. Just so you know, it's not my thing. It's your thing.
Yeah.
Like, that's fine. It's totally fine. It's not for you. So it was really good, but that's awesome.
By a neighbor, just because I tell everyone, because we get together. I have very little patience for parties now, unless it's personal, you know, because what do you do with a whole bunch of, but we had a wonderful evening with the neighbors, just women together, my daughter, and I said, yeah, quit. I feel great. And just a few days ago, I got a text from my next door neighbor. She has 2 young children. She said, I'm trying to quit again 5 days ago. I can't stop thinking about what you said about feeling like you again. And who was the author that you mentioned? So I sent her all the links. And then I have another friend who I mentioned your program to, and she's a counselor, and I just saw her hiking. And she said, by the way, I have 2 clients who quit with the Annie Grace program. So,
great.
Yeah.
Ripple. I love it. It's amazing.
Yes. Yep.
So let me ask you the question that I always end on, which is if you were going to go back in time and, you know, talk to Barbara, who felt like she was basically checking out a bit from 5 to 10 p.m., what would you tell her about what life is like now?
Well, I would say, don't forget or remember who you were before. That person is still there. That energy is not gone. This is not a natural progression. You don't have to just like the angle of repose, you know, settle in at the bottom of the hill and go, it's just getting, you know, you are still in there and you will come to life. You know, try it, give it a try, because it is there waiting for you.
Oh, I love that. It's amazing.
I mean, yeah.
It's so great. Thank you so much, and good luck with all of your this must be the full moon or what? I don't know.
I don't know what's going on. I will have a clear October. So
Are we 9 months from quarantine right now? Is that possible? What's going on? Or no?
Not quite yet. No.
That will be interesting too, right?
Yeah. Quarantine babies, yes. Or maybe, yeah. I don't know. Yeah. No, it's so lovely talking. Yes. I mean, who knows? I may look into your program to become a coach or something.
It'd be wonderful. You have a great presence and such a great way to tell a story and connect. So
yeah, I'm pretty passionate about it. So
beautiful.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Well, thank you, Barbara. You have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Hey, it's Annie Grace. I want to tell you about the most important book that I never wrote. And I mean that. This is This Naked Life. It's 48 true stories of people finding freedom from alcohol, and it's so inspiring. It's our stories, as you know from this podcast, that truly change us, that revolutionize what we believe is possible for ourselves. So it's This Naked Life. You can find it on Amazon or check it out online. Even download it 100% free at nakedlifestories.com. And every single copy that you buy, all the proceeds are 100% committed to keeping the alcohol experiment forever free for anybody who needs it. So check it out. It's such an inspirational book. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, as it truly helps the message reach somebody who might need to hear it today.